welcome back to the Camp Chronicles podcast. In today's episode, we're going to focus on a big part of, I think, a lot of people's worries, and that is orientation, getting to camp. We're going to go kind of through how it works for us, from literally getting to the airport to getting all the way through to the end of orientation.
Yeah, orientation's a big one, isn't it? I think because when you go, you're just literally thrown into the deep end and you don't always have, well, in fact, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to have a clue what's going on. And like, even if we go through our experiences at our camps, like you could go to a different camp and literally they could do orientation a whole different way. But at least we can kind of give you a general idea because a lot of things will probably be similar, won't they?
Definitely. So kind of starting off from the airport, we have 2 buses. We get picked up from Newark and JFK, and there's 2 arrival dates. So the first arrival date is usually 2 days before orientation starts, and that's when waterfront and leadership staff come to camp. The reason why they come a little bit earlier is because waterfront have to go through 2 days of like lifeguard training, so it's to kind of get that out of the way before orientation starts. And then 2 days later, the counsellors arrive, who are like general counsellors, and then the day after that, that's when orientation starts.
Yeah, ours is similar. We have the high ropes, like outdoor adventure staff, and all the waterfront staff. They come like a few days earlier actually than everyone else because, like you were saying, you need to be like fully trained up. So for anyone that is a lifeguard already at home, even if you're qualified, you're probably going to have to go and get re-qualified in America because you need that qualification to be a lifeguard at a camp. And then we usually have like the next 2 days later, all the like sort of leadership team arrive, or the rest of leadership team who aren't there. The next day, all of the activity specialists arrive, and then I think we have quite a lot of arrival dates actually. Then a few days after that, the international cabin staff arrive, and then the day after that, all the remaining American like cabin staff come. So ours is quite spread out actually in comparison to yours.
Yeah, so like this year, I think the dates are the 17th of June. You've just reminded, actually, outdoor adventures also get there earlier. You've just reminded me. So 17th of June, waterfront staff get there, outdoor adventures get there, and then leadership staff get there. Then we have it like the next day, nobody really arrives apart from the American counsellors who'd like drive up to camp, because a lot of the JC counsellors come then to drop all the stuff off, because then they have to leave again to go and do exams. But then the day after that is when the other 2 buses come. So we literally only have 2 dates really where people come.
Yeah.
Good.
I know. I mean, I think it's probably better that way because I know, like, my first year when I arrived, I was obviously in like the last group of arrivals, and there'd been like people that had been there for nearly a week before we came. So, like, when my arrival group, all the other cabin counsellors arrived on that day, it was kind of like a bit overwhelming because I was thinking, like, a week of camp honestly could feel like a full month. Like, these people are going to feel like they've known each other for so long already, and they're just going to be like in groups, and then no one's going to want to be our friends. But honestly, like, when you actually get there, it was fine. Like, obviously they're friends with each other already, but then that makes it easier because they've settled in, and then they can like help you to settle in. So if you are like in a later arrival group, I wouldn't stress too much because in some ways it can actually be better for you.
I totally agree with what you're saying, and just like push yourself into it and go out your comfort zone. Just try and make friends. Like, that's the most important thing that you can really do. With orientation bunks, just what's reminded me actually is when you're arriving a little bit earlier, like sometimes there's only like 1 or 2 people in the bunk for like them couple of days at my camp. So last summer, I was actually the only one in my orientation bunk because everybody else was due on the later arrival. What happened is, because that was the same for some other returning counsellors, they just like hopped into my bunk and we just kind of had a sleepover. But the way that orientation bunks work at my camp is that you'll have your orientation bunk, so that's just a mixture of people from different specialty areas, from people that are going to be in different age groups, and then that kind of lasts for a few days. And then once you decide who's in your divisions, you'll then move to the bunks that them kids are going to live in. And then what happens from there is sometimes you'll have to like hop around the bunks that your that you're originally staying in your divisional orientation bunk, because you'll then get placed in your actual bunk. Let's do a count of how many times I've just said bunk in one sentence. But that's kind of how it works. So usually you'll move twice. You're kind of living out of a suitcase. You don't really want to unpack when you first get there. So massive tip, just really quickly, make sure you put things in packing cubes. And I would advise, if you have a backpack, put stuff in that you want for just during orientation in there, so you're not opening and closing and opening and closing your suitcase, because it can get very messy in your orientation bunk and you don't want to lose things.
That's so true. Like, you do literally end up living out the suitcase, because there's no point in fully unpacking into a bunk that you're then only going to be in for like a few days or a week. So it's definitely worthwhile having packing cubes. It just makes it so much easier to find everything. And that's another thing, actually. It can be quite eerie being in, like you were saying, if you were there by yourself, these bunks are like pretty huge and there's all these beds in them. If you're in there with like one or two people at first, it feels like so weird and it's like really quiet. But then as soon as obviously the kids move in, it's just chaos and you're kind of like, whoa, maybe it'd be nice to go back to the quiet bunk for a second. But yeah, they're quite good. I would say at my camp it's split in like orientation bunks. So there's usually a mix of some returners in there, some new staff, and they'll put like some lifeguards in with like higher up staff, with activity staff, and then cabin counsellors obviously come in here and there, so that it does give you a good chance to get to know everybody. My first summer, because we were again the last group of arrivals, I didn't actually have like an orientation bunk before I moved into my official bunk. Like, we just moved straight into our official bunks because we'd already been given our cabin placements. So it just depends how your camp does it, really. And that's another thing, actually. It can be really weird, especially if you've like maybe not been to uni before, lived in halls, anything like that. Maybe if you've literally just come straight from living at home, moving into like a cabin with bunk beds with like a group of random people that you've never met. It can be quite overwhelming at first, but then again you just like settle into it so quick, and like I honestly find it so like comforting just knowing that I'm not in a big cabin by myself and there's other people around me going through the same thing.
I agree, and I think, like, to come from living with people for 7 weeks, like constantly, it's like that first night on your own, isn't it? After camp's
It's
finished, you're
horrible.
like, wait, where's everyone gone? So, like, beforehand, you found it so weird the first few nights and you had to adjust to it. And then you go to being like, okay, why am I not living with another like 12 people? This is so strange.
It is horrible. And this year, like with my role that I've got, I'm gonna have my own room. And like part of me's thinking like maybe during orientation I'll just like sleep in a bunk just so I can like not miss out on having the whole like staying in a cabin with everyone sort of thing. And then obviously when the kids come, move into like my actual room. Because obviously it's a privilege, it's nice to have my own room, but like also part of me is gonna have major FOMO from being in the orientation cabins.
That's so funny. You're gonna be like that. You're gonna be like that leadership staff that never leaves the bunk until like literally the last minute, aren't you?
Literally, I'm just going to be waiting there till the last second.
That's so funny. So moving on to like activity periods during orientation, my camp kind of runs a little bit similar to what it does like during camp, during orientation. So like we'll have set schedules, we'll have like a timetable of how orientation's going to run. And then on like some mornings you might be doing a full staff talk, like going through safeguarding and things like that. Or then you might have like breakout groups where you go off like girl side and boy side and you talk about like things that happen girl side, things that happen boy side. Or you might go into like workshops. So for example, we do have this one afternoon where there's like 6 different sessions and you can choose like 3 sessions to go to, and you can kind of move around each one of them, and there'll be leadership staff that like lead it, and they'll talk about eating, like dietary requirements, they'll talk about body image, they'll talk about how to connect with campers that you're struggling to connect with, like things like that. And you can kind of go to the things that you feel most nervous about, which is really good. I think the only thing about that is sometimes there's more than just 3 sessions you want to go to.
Yeah.
So kind of just reaching out and being like, is there any chance I could know a little bit more about this? or when you kind of get into your divisions, you can kind of ask, can we go over, for example, in my division, we really struggle with fussy eaters.
Mm.
Like, you can ask your like lead staff member, can we go over again just how to focus on this with the children? Everyone's there to help, and orientation is your training time. But also, don't panic if you don't know everything during orientation. There's still things that I don't know, and I'm like going into it in my fourth summer. Like, you do learn on the job, so like don't panic if you're not 100% ready after orientation.
The orientation can't prepare you for everything. Like, there'll be things that come up, like you literally do just have to think on your feet. You're kind of provided with like the majority of the basics, but like, you've got kids coming from all over and their home lives are different, and like you just can't be prepared for everything basically, and you can't be told like this is how you need to react in these situations, because how you react in each situation will be different depending on the severity of it and like the kids. And yeah, so it's good kind of like basis. But I know what you're saying about, obviously, if you can only pick 3 sessions to go to out of the 6, that must be quite hard. Like feeling like you're going to miss out on things. I know the way we usually do it is there'll be, like you're saying, full camp, like everybody's there, like all of boy side, all of girl side kind of talks. Then there'll be ones where it's just boy side and girl side separately. Then you'll have like the division talks. Then like the oldest ones, like who've got like the 9th, 10th, 11th graders, we usually have a big talk. Because obviously the kids get, like, you get canteen, ours get deck time, and there's just extra things that have to be covered with that. And I think some of like the things that are covered in orientation are things that you probably don't think about before you go to camp. Like, obviously you're talking a lot about like eating habits, like fussy eaters, also things like mental health, um, like eating disorders, and like loads of things like that they kind of just like bring to the forefront of your mind as things to watch out for. And another thing, actually, that I totally forgot about just before when I was thinking about this, you were talking about obviously sessions during the day. There is so much like behind the scenes work that goes on during orientation that the kids obviously don't realize any of this happens until they become JCs, and then they realize like, oh my God, there's like so much that has to happen at camp. Moving beds, I don't know, do you have, yeah, I see the eyebrow raise, I'm taking that as a yes. Um, Obviously, the cabins won't have the same group of kids sleeping in there every single summer, or even if they do, like they might gain new kids in that bunk, so there'll need to be a different amount of beds in the bunks each year. So all our beds are bunk beds. So quite often, all the cabins will need rearranged, and you'll have to be lifting and carrying bunk beds out of bunks, adding them into other bunks, and you can almost guarantee that, I don't know, maybe the boys will come to help and Emily will tell them, oh, move this bed from Osprey to Falcon, and they'll move it from Falcon to Osprey instead, and then it'll all have to be rejigged, but times 2. Um, just like little behind the scenes things like that. Is there any jobs that you were like, oh my God, I did not think I'd have to do this during orientation?
Well, we're very fortunate that usually Belt, who's the head of boy side, him and somebody else usually like comes round and does all the bed moving,
Mhm.
which we're very fortunate about that. But we have to like say we need this moving, we need this bed adding, we
Mhm.
need this type of bed taken out. This doesn't work. Like, it is like you said, all the behind the scenes bits. I think just for me, it's the unpacking the kids. I
Oh
think
yeah.
that's the biggest job of orientation.
Mhm.
Um, and obviously we're going to go into that in this episode, but I think for me that's the job that just takes over my mind. I can't think
Yeah.
of any other little ones.
I think I don't know if you've had to do it, but mulching, and mulch is basically just like bark, and like on our council ring area, it's all like bark chippings and stuff like that, and it gets like a new pile of mulch bark added every summer, and but it literally comes and it gets dumped off the back of a truck in a mountain, and then we have to spend the whole day with rakes and stuff dragging it all out and separating it, and even with like 10 of us doing it, that can take a few hours. And like the same with like going down the hill from girls' side if you walk like down through the foresty bit through nature where the high ropes course is and stuff, that whole hill needs mulched as well, and all the high ropes course at the bottom. So that is like a really big job as well, that like the kids probably don't realize that we have to do, and then they come as JCs and they're like, oh my god, like I actually have to do this.
That's so funny.
um
We have a pre-camp group that usually go to camp, and they
mhm,
usually go the start of May, and they kind of do all of that stuff. They do all the painting, all the cleaning of the
mhm.
bunks, like sorting out the bark, making sure the grass is fine, like making sure all the areas are okay. But obviously I'm flying out early this year, so who knows, I might end up being knee deep in all of that bark.
You need to be prepared for it. And like I guess you were saying before as well, like unpacking, that is such a big thing of orientation. And it's like, I can't remember if we talked about this in our culture shocks episode or not, but it is a big culture shock. Ours kind of happens on two separate days. So like one day all the like trunks will come in like the vans and the lorries and stuff, and they'll get parked up. We'll usually do boys side first. They'll get parked up, and then it's like, right, okay, all hands on deck. Every single staff member is there, like heaving these massive like chunks around, and all the boys will get done, and it's like, oh yeah, that wasn't too bad. Then you go up to girls side, and the girls have all got like two trunks each, and they're like jam packed, like so full. Like the boys are easily just carrying like one of them on their shoulder on boys camp, and then you come up to girls side and it's like three people per trunk carrying them to the cabins.
We're the same, so we have the big yellow trucks. Usually boy side do theirs and girl side do theirs.
Mhm.
And boys always finish before we do, so they always come and help us carry the trunks. The only thing
Mhm.
is we have some cabins that are like up some stairs. So
Yeah.
it's called the teen house, I think it is.
Mhm.
And like the boys usually come and help us carry the trunks up, because like we're not talking like a backpack that's heavy. We're talking like, I can't even, like, it's like they're
It's like a
almost
body
filled with,
bag.
yeah, it's a body bag filled with bricks.
Yeah.
Like, so they're so heavy. And make
Mhm.
sure you pack gloves for the trunks, because it
Yeah.
literally rips the palms of your hands. It usually takes about like an hour and a half to unpack them off the trucks and get
Yeah.
them into the right bunks. And then once that kind of happens, we have a little bit of like a 20-minute breather, and then it's straight into the trunks,
Mm.
unpacking them. I actually think we could do a full unpacking video of the kids, like tips and tricks from the 3 years. There's like every
Yeah.
year something goes wrong with it. But
Mm.
yeah, you open these trunks and you look in them and you just can't believe the mountain of stuff. The
Yeah.
mountains of clothes with tags on that are brand new, the
Mhm.
Lululemon logos, the Aloe logos, the all of the logos in between.
Everything.
Like, it's crazy. But once you've finished unpacking the trunks and like you look at it, it's like lovely and beautiful
Mhm.
and nice, and then the kids arrive, and then within 3 hours it's an absolute mess again.
That's like, it's so much work, isn't it? Like actually unpacking. And we've had really bad luck, I feel like. I think it was last year, I can't remember if it was the summer before. It might have even been both of them. It was raining on trunk day. So like obviously when you're like taking the trunks into the cabins, everyone's coming in and out the cabins, they've got muddy, wet feet, and the cabins end up gross and disgusting, and they all just get chucked in like massive piles in the middle. And then you're like trying to drag them around out to the right beds. And then, like you're saying, when you eventually end up unpacking, like you're opening up these little kids' like stuff, and it's just like the cutest things. And they all got their like camp swag. Like they'll have their Camp Echo pillows and their Crazy Creek chairs and their like wellies and stuff. So, but then also some parents, I don't know if they just aren't prepared or they forget to pack like the most basic things for their kids. So I don't know if you have this, but we have like a little checklist. So every single person that we unpack, we have a checklist for them to make sure that they've got everything, like the main things that they need. So I don't be like, oh, Sophia doesn't have a pillow. They forgot to pack a pillow, so then I'll have to go to like one of the camp moms and be like, oh, I need a pillow for Sophia. Or it'll be like, I don't know, like I'm trying to think of some more names. Lainey. Lainey's got no sneakers. Like none. She's just got Crocs, and then we're gonna have to contact Lainey's parents and be like, you need to send her some sneakers because she's got none. So that's things to watch out for when you're unpacking. Make sure you actually check that the kids have like all the basics that they should have.
And check all of the pockets of the trunks. The amount of times where we've messaged a parent being like, they don't have this, the parent's like, but I packed it,
Mm-hmm.
but didn't say specifically which pocket. And these trunks come with about 50 different pockets inside of pockets inside of pockets. Like, honestly. So then we've got to packing the kids back up. We've opened a zip and we're like, oh, there's all your extra toiletries. Whoopsies.
Yeah.
Who unpacked that kid?
hmm
So just kind of
It's
also make a note of which kid that you unpack. I think that's
yeah.
a really good one.
Do you have to do you handle like the trunk storage during summer? Is that something you do, or do other people do that for you?
The way that it works is you'll have a trunk and
Yeah.
you'll tag all of the trunks. You'll put it in one of the trunks,
Mm-hmm.
and then someone will come around with a golf cart and they'll just take them and then they'll put them in the massive shed. But
Yeah.
our suitcases go in the same place as where the trunks go, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
So
it's a lot. Like I was on I call it trunk duty last summer, and obviously, like you're saying, you've got to make sure like you fold the trunks up and put them all inside of one trunk. The trunks in itself are so heavy, so when you've got like 4 or 5 trunks inside another, carrying that is really hard as it is. And is your camp split into sessions as well, or is it just one
no,
big?
mine's just one big one, luckily.
So obviously we have the full 7 week session, or some kids will do the first 4 weeks or the last 3 weeks. So you've got 3 sets of labels for different trunks. So you have to know how long each kid's coming for. Because if you pack like a 4 week kid's trunks in with all the 7 week kids' trunks, then you're gonna have to rummage through all of them. So you've got to you always need to have like a point person in each cabin that has like a list of the names and how long they're here for, so you don't end up like getting them mixed up, and that is a serious job in itself. But hopefully if you're listening to this, don't be too put off, because there'll be people there that know what they're doing. It just can be like a lot all at once.
It can be, but it's also quite like therapeutic at the same time when like
Yeah.
it's a good way for you and your co-counselors to bond
hmm
because you're in that bunk together and you're helping each other out with like say unpacking the bed stuff or helping each other put the comforter on, like making sure everything's neat.
hmm
It's a good way for you to just spend time together listening to music, just vibing, getting to know each other. So it
hmm
is fun unpacking the trunks. Like I've got to admit, it's one of my favourite days. I enjoy doing it, and I
Yeah, I think
enjoy
it's
packing them
cute.
back up as well. It's a little bit more stressful because
Mm.
sometimes I find that these trunks come packed and then they're half empty when they're leaving, and I'm like, okay, how did this work? But then
Yeah,
obviously, like, they don't really take the egg crates back home, so like you've got to
that's true.
factor in stuff like that. But yeah, don't be nervous or alarmed by us talking about the trunks because it is actually fun to do, and you do get to know your co-counselors better, and it helps you to learn to know like what the kids like. So, for
hmm
example, they'll like have pictures or like their blankets that they have customized, and like on this blanket you might see that they've got 2 dogs, they've got a horse, they enjoy playing basketball, so it's a good way to also get to know the kids, especially the younger ones.
Yeah. I mean, that's another thing you were saying, obviously, about kind of it's a good way to bond with your co-counselors. And a whole part of orientation is obviously like making sure like you bond with the other staff members that you're going to be working with. And it's not just like the people that are going to be like your direct co's, like sleeping in the same cabin. It's like all staff. So like I don't know, like we do a lot of things either evening activities or during the day. Like one of my favorite ones is we do speed dating, and literally everybody just is in a massive circle around one of the basketball courts, and then there'll be like one big circle on the outside, one big circle on the inside, and everybody has to come up with like 3 questions, and then you basically just go speed dating. So you'll start off talking to the person that's in front of you, and you'll have like your 3 questions, and then like you'll move around a person and you end up like speaking to someone else. By the end of it, I always literally feel like my voice is about to die. um But yeah, I just think it's fun, and it's like an easy way to just like get to know people. Like you can, it's kind of forced, but almost it's like easier because it's forced, because you've got a set of questions that you're like, oh God, now I don't have to think of a conversation starter. Like you literally can just talk to these people about your 3 questions.
We
So
do
yeah.
something similar to that during orientation, and it's usually like the first night, the evening activity that we do, and it's
hmm
called the clock game. So it's a 12-hour clock, and you've got to go around the basketball court, and you've got to like find people that have like the same time as you free. So like say I'd come up to you and be like, Ellen, are you free at 2 o'clock? You'd say I'm free. Then would match up. And then what happens is the head staff, usually they'll call out a number, and then they'll say like a random question like, what's your favourite takeaway food? And then you go to your 5 appointment, and that's what you discuss, and it's just an easy way to get to know people.
But actually, yeah, it's like very similar, but almost like a little bit extra, like they're adding like extra bits in for you. Do you just like do a lot of different evening activities as well? Because I have, again, some of that evening activities during orientation are some of my favorite. Like we did Israeli line dancing, where this guy comes and he basically like teaches you these like different dances to these songs, and like one of them is like for Crazy Frog, and it's like do 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 do, ring ring, and that is ingrained in my brain now from that.
It's when you go out and like Cotton Eye Joe comes on, and you like you just automatically do it. I don't know how it happens, and like it's not usually a song you'd listen to on a night out, but you can guarantee if you're on a night out with your camp friends, at least 1 or 2 camp songs will just somehow miraculously come on, and everyone just looks at each other and like breaks out into dances.
I
It's
just
so strange. We have a lot of evening activities every night, and one of the big things is that we try and make it themed. So, for example, we do a big camp dodgeball session, and it kind of splits into themes of Western, country club, jerseys, beachwear, and you like split up into random teams, and then like you verse each other. Last year, I played, and I was like one of the last ones in. And then one of the guys called Logan decided to throw the dodgeball, and the rule is you can't hit someone's face. Well, he threw the dodgeball, hit me in the face, and my jaw locked.
Oh no.
My jaw locked in like this, and I
Oh,
genuinely thought I'd broke my jaw. Like
that's
I couldn't
brutal.
move it. And that team still ended up winning because they didn't count me getting hit in the face.
Oh,
So he
that's
should have
bad.
been out. So I'm still fuming to this day, and I refuse to play dodgeball this year. Tyler
That's
Hill, if
so
you're
bad.
listening, I'm not playing dodgeball this year because I got brutally injured last year.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, we don't do any like big sports ones, but I think that would be really fun. But then again, I can imagine it would get quite heated if we did dodgeball or something. Another one of my favourite ones that is only a recent thing, as in like the past 2 summers, is Hannah's pub quiz. So my lovely little Hannah Adair, she'll do like a pub quiz for everyone, and it's got like different rounds and stuff. So you have to just like you'd put into like random groups, and it's like some returners, some new staff, and stuff like that. And then there'll be like different categories. So there'll be some like camp questions about camp specifically, like general knowledge ones, geography ones, and stuff like that. And then what are those things called where it's like the pictures, but like they make a phrase? You just gotta like say what you see. Do you know what I mean?
I think I know what you mean, but I couldn't explain it myself.
Like one of them. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how you explain it. And I was on the winning team, not last summer, but the summer before, and we won a Camp Echo Croc Gibbet, and I was very, very happy with our success. And then I'm trying to think, like, obviously we've been like general counsellors and stuff, but on the flip side, if anyone's going as activity staff, a big part of your orientation is going to be setting up your activity areas and sort of trialing like session plans. So that's a good thing for us, is that when the trialing of the session plans are going ahead, we get to go out and like do the high ropes courses, or we get to go to cooking and help try the recipes that they're gonna do, or we're gonna go and play like soccer or basketball or something. I love doing that.
That sounds so fun, and I wish we did that. Like we have like we obviously do the dodgeball thing. We usually have like a kickball tournament during the day, but we don't really get to test out like the high ropes or anything. Like the only time we really get in the water is when we do our swim tests. So maybe that's something I might take forward to Tyler Hill and be like, follow in Echo's footsteps. Like they have loads of fun, and they get
Yeah.
to go on the high ropes, so we don't.
No, yeah, actually should, because it also is like good, because then it gives the people that are working in those areas a chance to like actually like demonstrate that they do know what they're doing. Or for example, like I don't know, if you've got soccer and you've made this whole session plan, but then like the staff come, and if the staff get bored, then you know you're going to have a problem, because the staff are getting bored during your session, then the kids are going to be twice as bored. So it kind of like gives the people that are running these activity areas like a good idea of what to expect and how to handle it. So yeah, I just kind of assumed every camp would do that, not gonna lie.
I think a lot of camps probably will do it. I think
Yeah.
we just like kind of focus a little bit more on like a lot of like talking sessions.
Yeah. That's
But I think this orientation, I think some things that we've done previously have kind of been removed from the schedule.
Mhm.
So maybe, who knows, we might get time to do stuff like that.
Yeah, another big part of orientation is obviously they're going to kind of run through like policies and procedures with you. And again, every single camp will be different. So it is really important that when you are during orientation, you do actually listen to these policies and procedures, because if you don't follow them, you could get sacked. So take them on board when you're at camp, like during orientation, so that you try not to step out of line too much during your summer, because you don't want to get sacked. And I think one of the best places for these policies and procedures type things to be tested is on the first night off during orientation. Like, my first two summers, they took us to this place called QB Ball, and it was like a bar, and they had axe throwing, and they had like, it was like bowling with like American footballs, except you were like doing it against each other. And it was a great vibe. I loved it. Last year they took us to the Palisades Mall, which I didn't enjoy as much because everyone kind of split off into like little groups. And like, I think it's much better being at QB Ball when everyone was together. Although it was unattended axe throwing, might I add. So, so you go into this place and they've got like a little separate room off the side with two like boards for the axe throwing. And it's obviously a bar, so like people are drinking, like everyone that's over 21 is drinking. And like you've got people that are axe throwing like unattended, like literally. I'm surprised no one's ever got injured during that, to be fair. But yeah, like they're gonna go through the policies, and like you'll be watched like a hawk when you come back from camp on that first night off to a bar. So just bear in mind, if you get a little bit too silly, then you're gonna kind of have yourself on the hit list for the rest of the summer. I don't know if you found the same.
It's a little bit similar with us. So we kind of get like an afternoon off to go to like Middletown Mall, and
Mhm.
then we have an evening where we get to go to Wayne on the Hill, which is our local bar.
Mhm.
To be honest, the issue is the fact that the whole of the camp pretty much goes. So the line's like all the way out the door, and by the time you get in there and eventually get served, you've got like 20 minutes
Mhm.
before the bus is picking you back up. Like, it is a little bit of a nightmare. But what we did this year, which I thought was really good and it was so much fun, was that we were at Worth from 5 till like 9:30. The
Mhm.
buses picked us up. We got back to camp, and we had the guy who teaches you all the different dances. We
Mm.
had him come into camp that night and do a dance party with us. So we were
Oh,
all in
that's.
the social hall doing like this dance party, which was so much
Mhm.
fun. And obviously, like, you saw the odd members of head staff would nip in for like 20 minutes. They'd leave for 5 minutes, then a new set of head staff members would come.
Yeah.
Like, it was good fun. Like, we really, really enjoyed it, and you are being watched like a hawk, and it's a good test. I
Mhm.
mean, you've got to be on the ball, because to an extent you're probably going to go back and think, oh well, like, I haven't got any of the kids to look after yet. But it's
Mhm.
a test as to like if you are going to follow the camp rules, which you should
Yeah.
100% do.
And we did talk about a previous episode about camp being like Love Island. And that first night off during orientation is a real show of exactly what's about to unfold, because it's like the only night off apart from maybe the very last, like your departure day of camp, if you go to the city and have like a staff party. It's the only night off where everybody is together. Like other than that, like at our camp, and I think probably most overnight camps, like you're going to be split. You're not going to be off with everybody at the same. Well, you can't be off with everybody at the same time. um and that is where like you start to notice like who fancies who and who's going to be getting with who for the summer, and the whole like camping like Love Island sort of thing does start to unfold on that first night off.
And it's absolutely great to sit and watch.
Yeah.
I love it. It's one of my favourite evening activities on the night off, is to see who's getting with who and who's kissing who. But it's funny because you'll see that kind of unfold there, and then
Hmm.
you'll sit back if you're a returner and you'll think, well, actually, they're a Wednesday day off and they're a Thursday day off, so that's just honestly not really going to work. And then you'll see, like, you'll be in the middle of camp and you'll see the person who was on Wednesday day off getting with a Wednesday day offer, and then
Hmm.
it's just, yeah, Love Island to a great extent of camp.
And as they always say on Love Island, don't put all your eggs in one basket too soon. Because, like someone just said, you put all your eggs in one basket and then they don't end up being on your time off, then you're not really going to see them. You're not really going to have much time with them. So, yeah, that little notion on camp being like Love Island. I know as well, just before when we were talking about being watched like a hawk, this is maybe not necessarily in like a negative way. But I noticed that as a returner, a lot of the time you can kind of spot the characters during orientation that are likely gonna end up being like captains, lieutenants, deans for like colour wars and stuff. Sometimes you do have people that come in and they're just like totally unexpected and they like maybe fly under the radar for a little bit, but then like by the end of camp they're amazing. Or you can have it the flip side where people you think, oh my god, these are going to be amazing, and they're just nosedive. But I like to get my captain, dean, lieutenant predictions in basically by the end of orientation for who I think it'll be.
That's so funny. Like that's a big thing at our camp. Like we discuss that now. Like we discussed that in like February, March time. We're like, what's our prediction? I think it's a big thing with the like ex-campers, like who's really fighting for a position in colour war.
Yeah. And this, by the way, is something that is literally the end of the world at camp, but when you're outside of camp, it literally doesn't matter in the slightest. Like, you're not going to be able to put on your CV, like, oh yeah, I was colour war captain. And this is not me playing it down, by the way, because like when you're at camp, like it is a big deal. Like for those like 7 weeks when you're at camp, or it's a big deal to a lot of people. But as soon as you leave camp, you realise like that doesn't matter outside of the camp bubble. It's kind of sad, isn't it? Like, because like so many people are so dead set on it, and then yeah, that's a whole other thing in itself, isn't it?
100% it is. Just to kind of round off the episode, we've kind of touched on nights off during orientation, but more than likely you will get the opportunity to go out to shops to get like your essentials, like your shampoo, your conditioner, your body wash, your comforters, all that stuff that you can't really pack with you if you're an international counsellor. So we go to Middletown Mall. I've said this like a million times. We go to Middletown Mall, which is right near Camp Echo. There's a massive Target there, and we usually spend like hundreds of dollars each. You can have a basket of 5 things, and it's going to cost you over $100. It is crazy, like how fast things add up. So just prepare to budget like a little bit of money to put aside to be like, this is what I'm going to spend, because for some reason it's very expensive to clean yourself in America. I will say that much.
It adds up so quick. Like things like spray deodorant, I swear are just so expensive in America compared to here. So like I always bring like quite a few spray deodorants with me. And they don't do anything by half. So like if you want to buy shampoo and conditioner, you're not buying like a one this big. It's gonna be this big. So even if you don't end up using it all, you're still having to pay for it anyways. And also like that first Walmart trip, if you've never been to Walmart before, it's like it can't even really be comparable to going to big Tesco because there's guns on the wall and there's like all these random things that you would never see in big Tesco. But that's like probably the closest thing I can think to. You're going to be overwhelmed. You're going to want to buy all the snacks. You're going to want to buy like all the 4th of July merch and like cool random things to decorate your bunk. So yeah, budget. Wasn't spending money on that first Walmart or Target trip for sure. So, last little bit of the episode, we thought we would kind of finish off giving like our top tips for either first timers or returners. So, this is applicable to everyone. So, I would always recommend just like throwing yourself into every single activity possible during orientation, like during evening activities, during like if you're trying activities during the day, like just throw yourself in every single little thing, because if you do it during orientation, it'll be so much easier for you to then continue that on when the kids are there and help the kids and encourage them to be a part of everything if you can do it yourself. What about yours, Summer?
My top tip would be to make sure that you open yourself up to speak to everybody. Don't just kind of make one group that's kind of your comfort blanket and then not kind of go out and speak to other people. A great chance to do this is during meal times. So if you got your breakfast, lunch and dinner at camp, when you go into them different meals, make sure you go and sit with a new group of people. It can be daunting, but just do it and make new friends and have conversations. And that might be the only time you speak to them, but at least you've done it, and you could end up finding your best friend sat on that last lunch table, you never know. So just make sure you open yourself up to speaking to everybody, and at every opportunity you have to speak to new people, do it.
Yeah, totally agree with some of that. Just like take every opportunity to speak to new people and just like make the most of your time at camp. So that kind of rounds up our whole orientation conversation. I think, like we said at the beginning, a lot of different things will be applicable to different camps, but hopefully you can take some bits from here and it'll just kind of help to maybe settle your nerves a bit if you're a bit unsure about what the first week or 2 weeks of camp will look like. And as always, if anybody does have any topics that they would like us to discuss, we are getting closer and closer to the actual camp start dates for a lot of people. So if there's anything you want us to cover in future episodes, please let us know, or any guests you would like to see us try and have on, again, let us know. But thank you for listening, and we will see you in next week's episode.